If they don't wanna call my name, if they don't think that I'm beautiful, if they don't wanna see my face. Hi, welcome to Conversations with the Imisioluwa. I am that Imisioluwa, and it's an absolute pleasure doing this with you, to be sending out this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for the responses and the feedback on the introductory episode. It was amazing. Like, I feel so pumped. I feel so fired up. I couldn't wait to hear how you guys feel about it, and I'm so glad that you feel good. I'm so glad that you've been waiting for it. I'm so glad that you are committed to listening to this podcast. Thank you so much, and I promise that I would not disappoint you. Of course, there's so much that is coming from this podcast. There's so many amazing thoughts that I want to share with you. Thank you for listening. But first, how are you? How has the week been? How was the month of June? Yeah, how was it? For me, it was an amazing month. It was like an entire shift in certain areas of my life, and I hope that it was good for you. But whatever the month was, we have another chance to do amazing things, to do better in this month of July. And shout out to all the July born. I think I have a lot of friends who are celebrating their birthdays this month. Shout out to you guys, and to every other person too. So this is Conversations with Emisolu, and today I want to talk about the burden of new beginnings. And I will be identifying with some of the things that I had to go through, some of the burdens that I had to overcome or deal with in starting this podcast. Yes, the podcast came out and it was great, but a lot of things have happened behind the scene, right? And I think that you can identify with this, that fear of starting, that that thing that prevents us from starting, from doing all those amazing things in our heart, and that's what I want to talk about. So let's get right on to it. The first thing is the illusion of fulfillment. If you're anything like me, right, and you take time to dream about ideas, you think about stuff, when something drops into your mind, maybe you are praying, God gives you an instruction or an idea comes, or you just put two and two together and you're like, this is something great, and then you take time out to think about it. You imagine, you are dreaming about it, like this idea is going to be great, like the next big thing. You can imagine everyone listening to it. You can imagine everyone reading that book or buying that idea. You see how grand it is, when you have so many followers on Instagram. You just think about that idea in its potential, how big it can be. You think about the day you'll be giving that TED talk, right? Talking about those things that you have done. You think about those big ideas, like you literally live the moment and then you go into the future. You see those amazing things. And then you feel fulfilled, like you see that fulfillment. You can cut through it, like you have experienced it. And then you are like, this idea is worth doing. I'm going to do this idea. I'm going to make it happen, right? And then you wake up 2 days later and you can't feel all of that passion again. You can't feel all of, that drive again. It's not there. Or maybe it's after a bowl of amala and you're like, wait, maybe this idea is not as grand as I thought it was. Maybe it's not that big. Maybe it doesn't really, all of those maybes. And then you begin to draw back. You begin to fall back on that decision that you have made. It's something that I experience like literally every time. But then I've learned to deal with it, right? One of the ways I've learned to deal with it is by just anticipating that a time will come when this idea would not feel as great as it is, like I can feel it right now. By just anticipating that and expecting it to come, kind of give myself a mental preparation that helps me when that day comes. So when I first thought of this podcast and I first told my friends, and they're like, this is great. But a day came when I was supposed to hit the record button and all of those feelings were not there. It just felt like an ordinary activity, ordinary task. But because I'd anticipated it, I knew that this was that moment that I thought of. This was that thing that I had prepared for. And now that it is here, I had already prepared my mind that when that happens, I am going to do what I need to do. I'm going to get into it and I'm going to start it. And believe me, sometimes the passion, the drive that we're looking for comes after we overcome that obstacle, that burden. It's the same thing for relationships, right? You meet this amazing person and it's all amazing, it's all good, but you must remind yourself that a day is coming when you will not feel as much as this, but that should not be the death of that love because you are not feeling it. I mean, it's something that I would talk about in future episodes, but so that's that about new beginnings. And then one other thing that I've learned to do is to create a system, a plan that works, like Tayo, my friend, used to say that create an atmosphere that makes certain things difficult and makes certain things good for you. One of such things is to talk to someone you know that will keep you on your feet. That helps you. Writing down the brilliant ideas and all those things that you have felt, the reason why this is a good idea, how people will benefit from it, helps you. You can always go back to it. You can always read it again and then get that energy and get at that idea. And sometimes by just planning that, okay, I want to write this book this month and I'm going to write it every morning. I'm going to write one page every morning. Helps you to stay in the reality, instead of living in that grand, thoughts in your mind. It helps you to stay in the reality, and then you can take it up from there. And then whatever passion you are looking for catches up with you along the way. So that's one of the burdens of new beginnings that we'll all have to deal with. That time when we're not feeling, where that idea does not feel as grand as it was when we conceived it. And the second thing would be the burden of perfection. If you're anything like me, we want to do great things. We want to do ideas. We want to push out ideas that would wow the world. But sometimes we must admit that wow moment we're looking for is a level of mastery that we have to attain in time. I've met people in my life who do not have as amazing ideas that I have, or who do not have as much skill I have, but who had started and who had grown. While I am still, trying to make the idea the best idea, these people have started and then they've grown very fast. Eventually, this is 1 year they've been doing it. They're great. I've still not started anything. I've still not done it because I'm trying to get to the to make it amazing. That is not to say that you should not start on a good note, but you must realize that the perfection, the mastery you are looking for is something to be attained. And that if I had started this podcast since last year, I would have gained a certain level of mastery right now. But if I don't start now, I would not give myself that opportunity and that chance to gain that mastery, in the next 1 year. So it's something that we'll all have to deal with. And, it gets even worse if you have attained mastery in some other areas of your life. For example, I've been writing, I've been singing. When it comes to those things, I could, there's a sense of confidence that I have to do those things, right? But now this is maybe the same content. Maybe content is not the problem, but this is a different platform. This is a different kind of delivery. And I'm like, okay, would I be able to be as flawless as I do when I do other things? Would I be able to do something that is international standard and all of that? But I had to remind myself, for those other activities, I'd spent time, I'd spent good time, mastering them. And this would also take its own time. This has to do with putting a voice to my thoughts, right? And now I'm scared that my inner Yoruba demon, not demon, please. My inner Yoruba pronunciations when it comes to English language would start fighting, right? And I would have to deal with that. But if I do not give myself that chance to get better, I ain't going nowhere. I won't get better. So this is me also pushing myself. So it was one of those burdens that I had to overcome, I had to be humble enough, to tell myself that maybe it won't be as flawless as I want it to be, but I need to start if I need to get through that point where I need to get to. And I hope that you can identify with that in your areas. And then the third thing is the burden of necessity. This comes when you wake up later and you're asking yourself, is this even necessary? When you see the work that needs to be done, when you see the effort, the sacrifices, the cost of that big idea, and you're asking yourself, is this necessary? Now, this is me. This is like 3 a.m. and I'm recording this, and I'm asking myself, okay, no, I didn't ask myself on this episode, but the earlier ones, I was asking myself that, why am I staying up late? Why am I doing this? Why am I spending all this energy? Is it worth it? Does it even make sense? What if this is not good enough? And all of those questions. But this is how I help myself. I'd ask myself, when you conceived that idea, were you in your right senses? Yes, I was. I was in my right senses. In fact, I just came from a prayer mountain and I was basking in all, and all of that. And I'm like, okay, so if you were in your right senses, then it means that you made a good decision to do this. And then I remind myself, I help myself to see the benefits, right? I tell myself that if all the ideas that have helped the world today, if they waited for those who needed it to approve it, maybe none of them would ever come into existence. But the people who did those ideas saw something and they pushed it, and so it is worth it. And then the fact that this is me doing this makes it even more worthy. This is me starting out something, trying out something new, pushing the boundaries of my creativity, putting a voice to all the things I've done. So yes, this is worth it, and it's something you really have to tell yourself. And okay, let's even say you need permission to do what you need to do. Please take my permission right now. I'm permitting you, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, to do whatever you need to do. I know it's going to be amazing. So we need to be able to tell ourselves, and let's even say that the idea won't be as grand as other ideas. Okay, let's say, for example, you might want to start a podcast. Don't look at my own podcast and say, Emisi is doing so great, and how will I match up? See, the thing is, you have a voice that is different from mine. You have your own stories, your own experiences, your own perspective to, even if you want to say the same things, right? And that's what I had to tell myself. There's someone somewhere who would resonate with you more than they will with me, or that they would do with any other person. And my friend Orifunke talked about this on her own podcast, where she talks about, you have your own audience. Sometimes there's someone who needs to listen to it in your own way, which makes whatever effort, whatever thing you are doing, makes it worth it. And the fact that you can even come up with the idea in the first place means that you should do it. So that's one of the other things that we have to deal with. And then lastly, it has to do with the burden of firefighters and firelighters. I mean, if you followed DDK on Activation Intense, she really exposed on that. And that's the fact that at certain stages, your ideas are delicate and fragile, and you have to be careful the people you tell about it. I've learned that over the years. I've shared some ideas with some people, or invited some people to help me with an idea, and that was the death of that idea. Like, the idea died. They killed it from the start. I mean, they are good people. Sometimes they are good people. They just do not have the tact that it takes to handle fragile ideas, or ideas that they are not entirely cool with. Sometimes those ideas are not perfect. In fact, sometimes they are completely unnecessary. But you need to find people in your life who know how to, no matter what the idea is, inspire value in you first before criticizing the ideas. And I am blessed to have some of those people, and I really want to take time out to appreciate them, because someday this podcast will be bigger than it is, and I really want them to know that they were part of that success. For example, when I told Eunice about this idea. She was the first person that I discussed it with this year, and she was like, wow, this is great. She said a lot of positive things. She helped me see that there's so much value. She helped me see that it was worth it, that I had something to say and that anybody would want to listen. She said all those good things that I will not forget, right? And all the times that I was preparing to do this podcast and I was putting effort, she was one of the reasons why I kept going, because I'm like, oh, someone believes in this idea. And in fact, the reason why the introductory episode had to come out in the month of June was because I had told her that I was starting in June, and I did not want to fall back on my words. I wanted to make sure it happened. And so you need friends like that. Talkware is someone who, when you tell him an idea, the first thing he says is makes sense. Sometimes I'm like, are you sure this thing makes sense? But it gives that vibe, that energy that, you know what, this idea makes sense. Later we may now have conversations about it that would fine tune, that will make me say, you know what, let me think about it properly, right? But at that initial point, it helps to preserve that delicate part of that idea. There's Tommy Omotosho, an amazing and crazy somebody like that, who she kept me on my toes, all through the planning. She, every time we talk, would say, have you started this? Why? What is delaying? What are you waiting for? How far have you gone? You said you would put this out on Monday. It's not there, and that is so encouraging. That someone, and because I know my friends have sense, right? I know they are intelligent and smart people. So when they put me on my toes for an idea, I'm like, okay, this idea makes a whole lot of sense, and I want to do it. And that's it. Interesting thing is, she's starting her own podcast, very soon. And I can tell you that it's going to be amazing. I'm literally laughing right now in advance for whatever that podcast is going to be, because you cannot remove that from any of the things she does, right? So, and I'll be sure to tell you about it when it comes out. She's someone you really should listen to. And then there's Miria Falabi. I hope her husband will not come and shoot me. Miria Falabi, who gave one of the most important feedback on the earlier episodes that I recorded. I mean, I when she sent a comment, I was like, this and this and that and this. At first it didn't sound like it, but because I know that this is someone who believes in me so much, this is someone who we have shared a lot of ideas together, it helped to be able to look at those things she said again. And when I looked at it, they were absolutely true. And if you enjoyed the introductory message, you did, because Mary gave an important feedback that I had to record again, that I had to work on. So it's important to have this kind of people in your life. It helps to overcome that burden of new beginnings. Really, we need people. I know a lot of people say stuff about motivational speakers sometimes, but you need motivation. We need motivation. We need to be motivated sometimes. Sometimes life is just gets onto us, and we need people who are firelighters, yes, who can fan those spark into giant fires, wide fires in our lives. And I try as much as possible to be that to my friends. So the burden of new beginning, you will combat that illusion of fulfillment. A day will come where you will not feel as great about the idea as when you first conceived it, but you must prepare ahead and then put plans in place to get you going. And then there's the burden of perfection. Your idea may not be as perfect as you would want it to be, or as you have achieved or attained in other areas, but you must start to get to that perfection. And then the burden of necessity, that voice that comes to tell you it's not worth it. Forget that voice. It is worth everything. It is worth it. It is worth it. And it is worth it. So if you're listening to me right now and there's something in your heart, something you have been planning to do, something that you've conceived that you are no longer feeling, as much as you did the first time, I want to encourage you to pick it up and start, right? And, to anticipate all of those challenges. and do them, to anticipate all of those challenges and to go ahead in spite of all of that. I'll be looking forward, to seeing you do all of those things. I'm rooting for you. And if the ideas that you want to share with me, or if there's something you want to, when you get them done and you want me to mention them here, please feel free to write to me or to send me a message, and I'll be so glad, to talk about them. So that's all for Conversations with the Imisioluwa today. I really hope that it resonates with you and you are able to pick up one or two things. There's a lot more to come, like a lot more. I'm tempted to say I want to do this podcast like 3 times every week, but that's part of, when that idea came, it was like, like 3 episodes a week. But I also know that I will not feel as great as doing that every time. So I put a plan, I put ahead a plan to ensure that no matter what happens, once a week and a side gist, I would always keep going. So thank you for listening. Please feel free to share. Feel free to send this to people. Let them listen. If you have friends, families, let them listen. Share on your social media, and let's everybody be a part of this. So thank you. If you are listening on Apple Podcast, that's iTunes, please write a review so that it would help the rating, really. And I'm looking forward to your feedback, your questions, your comments. Just bring them in. Let me know that this is amazing. And if there's 1 or 2 things you think can be better, please feel free to send them to me, right? You can reach out to me or get everything you need on www.theimisioluwa.com/podcast, or on my social media at the Imisioluwa, and I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you so much. I am the Imisioluwa, and this is Conversations with the Imisioluwa. And please believe me when I say that I love you. I love you so very much. I love you, and I love you. Have a wonderful month of July ahead. I'll see you on Saturday for a rather short side gist. Take care of yourself.